Morning, everyone, or afternoon. It's 12:01. I guess it's afternoon. Um, this is how to think like a CFO for your small business, part of our SPDC LEAF webinars this month. Next slide, please. I should introduce myself. Heidi Edwards Dunn, the Education and Communications Director for Small Business Development Center. And we're very excited to be able to offer these webinars. A little bit about SPDC. We do two things. We do one-on-one business advising with small businesses all across the state. And we also provide education, whether it's our e-courses, webinars like this, events, other kinds of resources online, etc. We are a program of Paul College and at the University of New Hampshire, a cooperative agreement between the US SBA and the state of New Hampshire through the Department of Business and Economic Affairs and the University of New Hampshire. And we work all over the state. We have regional teams, as you can see on the map, so that business advisors can work with clients actually in their local setting, so they know resources that are available for you. In 2024, we had our clients that we worked with had a $254.6 million annual impact on the state of New Hampshire. We worked with over 1,900 clients and supported over 6,500 jobs. So it was, we had a very busy year. Next slide, please. Some of our programs include the LEAF program that I mentioned earlier. It is the Legal Accounting and Financial Services program, and it's funded through the SSBCI program, and it is available to our clients. It's 5 hours with an attorney, an accountant, or other financial services to answer questions on contracts, for accountants to have some CFO services like you'll hear about today, work on QuickBooks, all kinds of things, a whole range of things. And that is 5 hours of free time with these consultants. And we're hoping that it continues for another couple of years. We're waiting to get the next tranche of funding in. But you can, if you are a client, first of all, you can sign up to be a client at our homepage. And if you are a client, you can talk to your business advisor about taking advantage of those hours of service. And we do a number of other programs, as you can see from the screen. And now I'd like to introduce Brad Caton. And he's going to introduce himself, but we're very excited to have Brad here. He's a fractional CFO with the CFO Center, and has worked with a number of our clients through the LEAF program. And we're excited to see what he's going to talk to us about today. Thanks, Brad.
You bet. Thanks, Heidi. Thanks very much for the handoff there. So yeah, I'm Brad Caton. I live in New England. A Celtics fan, still trying to recover from the playoffs this year. I'm a fractional CFO. I've done that for over 10 years now, and I did that for 16 companies. I'm now a regional director, so I sort of manage things, but still have a CFO in my bloods. I was a general partner in an angel capital fund. It's called the Investors Collaborative. I did that for 5.5 years. Before that, I was a serial entrepreneur. I did that from my late 20s to my late 40s. And you can see the things I did off to the right. I won't go through all those. It's not completely relevant to this topic today, but I was an entrepreneur. I was a CEO 3 times. I was also chief marketing officer twice. I've had over 20 board of director roles over the years. I'm also a registered investment advisor, certified exit planning advisor, and I have some other letters there on the bottom that you can see. So I'm with the CFO Center, and let me tell you about the CFO Center. So we accept less than 1% of the CFOs that will apply for us, apply to us, pretty selective in who we bring on. We are the number one provider of fractional CFOs in the world. So we have close to 800 CFOs worldwide, more than 150 across North America. We do net promoter score, and year after year, we have we get a 9 or 10 out of 10 by over 90% of our clients. We've been involved with over 1,000 exits, helping companies exit or family businesses transition. We've helped companies raise over $10 billion in financing over the years. We've worked with over 10,000 companies as their fractional CFO, their part-time ongoing CFO. And we've been around about 25 years now, almost 25 years. So probably the longest, at least the longest large one that we know of in the world. Okay, so that's me in the background of the CFO Center. Let's talk about CFOs. Who are CFOs and how do they relate to controllers? There's a lot of confusion about that, even from very sophisticated CEOs. So they're different. The controller role and CFO is different. Sometimes people play the same role, but technically they're different. So a controller, they're looking at the past, things that have happened in the past, and then creating financials that accurately reflect the past. Monthly, quarterly, yearly financials that reflect the past. They do monthly closings, quarterly closings, year-end closings. They're the interface with the tax team. The CFO, meanwhile, will take those hopefully very accurate financials that the controller has put together, and now we'll say, okay, from where we've been, this is where we should go in the future financially. And this could be things like we need a new pricing plan, or our costs are too high, or we need a new vendor into our cost of goods sold, or it's time to go international. So it's planning, it's proactive and insights and bringing that into the business. Okay, and that's what we're going to talk about today is the CFO role, not so much the controller role. There's a little bit of overlap, but today it's the CFO forward-looking, what could be with your company from a financial perspective. So I want to talk about the 4 aspects of a top CFO. So my job at the CFO Center, a big part of it is recruiting CFOs that we bring on board. So I've seen a lot of CFOs over these last few years, literally hundreds. And this is what we look for in a CFO. So if you are adopting the role of a CFO, the mindset of a CFO for your company, whether you're the business owner or just somewhere in the company, these are the things to think about. So first is the guardian. This is pretty standard for any good financial, even a controller, financial controller, but anyone who's good with finance is going to be a guardian to some degree, we would hope, right? Controlling on costs, make sure the margins stay in control, efficiencies, making sure the IT is going well, and often managing HR, right? So that's a guardian mentality. The next is the operator role. Not all CFOs have been operators, but to be an operator really allows you to give that insight from having been there in the shoes, right, of a CEO. The third is, if we go to the right side of the slide now, is the strategist. So someone who can think about strategic aspects for the company going forward. If you're particularly interested in strategy, I'm doing another webinar tomorrow, and would love you to join that, where we're going to talk about strategy. But a CFO is thinking strategy. And they're doing that also as a mentor to the CEO, but also to the board and stakeholders. And so you're operating at the CEO board level as well as at the financial level, right? So these are the top aspects of a CFO, what I look for when I'm recruiting CFOs. And if you're going to take the mindset of a CFO, kind of think about this, how can you be these 4 aspects for your company? Okay, I want to take a step back. So I assume people on this call are business owners or involved with a small business. It's really important to know, what are you trying to do with your business? Where are you trying to go? What's your North Star? What do you really want? And it's good to map that out in a timeline. And here I'll show you on a chart here. If you have a goal that you're trying to achieve, it's not going to happen overnight. So it's going to take probably a number of years. So you've got to plan how to get there. And then you'll see on the other axis here is the things that really matter. That could be money. For many people, it's just making money, and that's fine. But for others, it could be a mission. So, for example, at the CFO Center, we have a client that their goal, they don't care so much about money. They need money to grow the business, but their goal, it's an education kind of ed tech. They want to change the lives of 1 million students over the course of this entity's existence. And that's what they're measuring the company on. So, right, whatever matters. And without CFO thinking, you'll find at a certain point, you kind of get, it happens almost every company, you get stagnated. You just kind of get stuck. You lose the energy. You're working hard, but maybe not the most efficient way. Maybe you're not measuring the business. And that's where CFO thinking really comes into play. And first, it's at the operational level. That's the first thing to attack. Let's say if you're coming in as the CFO or putting the CFO mindset with yourself into the company, how can you help operationally? How can you make things more efficient? What new systems should be put into play? What about automations? Automation and AI is huge these days, and there's so many tools out there. So what operationally can you do to improve your business? And then any good CFO really wants to spend as much time as they can at the strategic level. How can you help the company grow and grow faster? Maybe we need to finance the company. And at the end, when you're able to achieve this layer of strategy, I guess we'll call it, it provides you more time as the business owner, more freedom, and eventually, of course, more wealth. Now, there's a tool we use at the CFO Center. It's the star of today's show. It's called the 12 boxes. And we're going to go through the 12 boxes in detail. Actually, I'm going to spend time on each individual box. But how this is used applies very directly towards your journey as an entrepreneur. First, at the operational side, how can you improve the operations of your business? And then secondly, at the strategic level, the things we had talked about. Okay, so now I'm going to take you through the 12 boxes. We're going to go through all 12 in a flyby, and then I'm going to drill down into each one individually. Okay, so at the business support layer, there's compliance at all levels, from the product, making sure it has UL certifications and any other certifications it needs to ship, to all the way up to board governance aspects. Are you compliant? The second box is tax and legal, two very important vendors for any business. Making sure your taxes are filed, correctly, and making sure they're taking advantages that you can for your business based on the tax code, and then legal. And it's probably more than one law firm that you have, or very well could be more than one law firm you have or lawyers that you're working with. So that's box 2. Third box is your outsourced vendors, your contractors. Yes, this would include your 1099 contractors, but maybe more interestingly, it's the third-party vendors that you have and optimizing them, making sure they're second source vendors, things like that. So we'll drill down into that. And then the last box at this business support layer is banking. Who's your bank, and do you have a good banking relationship? I know one entrepreneur I talked to about a year ago. He was so proud that he had never spoken with his bank. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're hiding from your bank? No, you want to do the opposite. You want to embrace your bank, get to know them. If you're going to grow your business, you're probably going to need your banker at some point. Then the operational layer. The operational layer, it's things like your systems and your controls. What accounting system are you using? Are you using an accounting system? It's okay if you're not. If you're using Excel, if you're a small business, that's okay. That's okay. But as you sort of grow the business, you'll find that using a tool like QuickBooks or Wave or one of these simple accounting systems can really be helpful for you. And then from there, like QuickBooks, I know very well, it integrates with many other third-party systems. So if you have a CRM for your customers, managing your customers and your marketing, they can integrate. And it allows you to be, more efficient. And once you have the systems in place, then you can start thinking about measuring the business, KPIs, key performance indicators. So measuring the business. There's an old saying that what isn't measured isn't managed, or at least managed properly. And by putting KPIs in place, these are just targets and goals you're trying to achieve on a monthly or quarterly, yearly basis. But you're able to see how you're doing, and then reset your goals and create a roadmap for yourself for the business. And then profit and cash flow. These are two additional boxes we're going to look at. They're related. You might say they're sisters, but they're also very different at the same time. And depending on the life cycle of your company, one may be more important than the other. And then the strategic layer. These are things such as exits. And this could be exiting your company. This could be planning your exit. And it's a good idea if you're growing a company and you think you may exit it someday to put an exit plan together because that way it happens with some kind of consistency rather than just hoping it happens. Or it could be growing your company by acquiring other companies, growth by acquisition. So the whole exit M&A box is one. And then risks and mitigations. What risks do you have? And then what mitigation plans can you put in place? As I mentioned in my bio, I was an entrepreneur for many years. And I must say, I was pretty guilty of not looking at risks. It was always what's on the upside, what could be good, putting the strategy in place, everything's going to work out perfectly. And quite a few times, well, enough times that I know it's important. The risks, I didn't think about the risks and they caught me. And so you should be thinking about your risks. And we'll talk about that. And then business planning. Yeah, this could be a full out business plan and 25, 35-page business plan, but it could just be a simple thing like, do I need a new pricing strategy? Should we go international? Does it make sense to bring on distribution in addition to our reseller channel? Things like that. So planning the business and executing on those plans. And then funding the business, right? That's the last box here. Box 12, we'll call it. Financing the company, whether it's equity, raising equity for your business, or getting debt financing or bank financing like a credit line. Okay, so these are the 12 boxes. I like to think of them as building blocks, right? You put the first layer down and you build on that, and then you've got your building blocks. So now we're going to walk through each one of these 12 boxes, starting with compliancy and governance. And what I'm going to show you here as we go through each of these, as I do my build on each slide, are examples. I could do an hour-long webinar on each one of the boxes, right? We don't have time. This is kind of a flyby overview of the 12 boxes. So these are sort of generic examples, or in some cases, very specific examples I've pulled out from CFOs that were working on companies and what they did, right? So if you're a business owner, you don't have a CFO, I'm telling you, or I'm asking you to put on your CFO hat. I guess that would be a green shaded hat, right? If I think about it, and think about how you can improve your business in these 12 areas, these 12 boxes. So first of all, do you have a board of directors? Well, if you're very early on, you may not need it. But, if the revenue is getting to the hundreds of thousands of dollars, if you see a pathway for maybe getting that to the millions, it sort of does make sense to get a board in place. And you have to decide what that looks like. Ahead of a board of directors, you may want to have a board of advisors, right? Experts that will come in and help you figure out things. In terms of compliancy, big ones, insurances. Do you have all your insurances? And you don't need to have every insurance that is out there. You don't want to be necessarily overinsured, but it is peace of mind. And if you are building something valuable, you don't want that taken away from you. So things to think about would be, liability, well, workers' compensation, that's a given. I think liability insurance for the business is another given, right? At least have that. That's the minimum you should have. But errors and admissions, if you're involved in data, for example, good policy to have. Cyber, it's become a very popular policy these days, often tagged on with the liability policies. Directors and officers insurance, key man insurance, these kind of things. How are you doing with states? If you're selling outside of your state, have you collected the taxes? Have you achieved nexus in that state? You need to start collecting taxes. What's the question? What's the answer on that? Are your current businesses licensed up to date? And then if you're a sort of a medium, a larger small business or medium business, and you have some investors, are you tracking your cap table on a spreadsheet? Many people are, but maybe it's time to put that into a tool like Carta. There's many out there. Carta is the market leader. So these are the kind of things in the box one, right? The governance and the compliancy that you want to be thinking about. And this is at the base level, right? This is a foundational level item. Tax and legal. You could almost put these right in the first box, but they're so important, we break them out as their own boxes. So when's the last time you met with your tax firm? Remember, one of the first things we do when we enter into a new assignment at the CFO Center is we'll go meet with the tax person or do a video call if they're out of state and see what's going on, see if there's tax advantages that aren't being taken advantage of. For example, if you have a lot of engineers on your salary, R&D tax credits, they're still out there. A lot of people don't take advantage of those. A lot of pretty sophisticated technology companies that should aren't taking advantage of it. Just as an example. How are you doing on your revenue recognition? right? And this is a very good job for potentially your tax team. Meet with a law firm. Plan out the next 12 months. What are you going to be doing? Might you be filing a patent? Is there some maybe copyright stuff that you're putting out there that you want to protect? So kind of create a little roadmap with your law firm. And if you're involved at all in anything to do with technology, and many companies are these days, and you have people that are working on things that could be inventions for the company, make sure they've signed their proprietary inventors agreements, because you don't necessarily have ownership of what someone invents unless you have them under this particular contract. There's many other examples with tax and legal. Those are just a few. Move on to box 3. So outsource vendors, contractors. Outsourcing has become a very important aspect to companies. There's an old model called the Porter Five Forces. Years later, he updated as the sixth force would be, your outsource vendors, because it is an important area, right? So review all those outsourced vendors you have. See how those are they under contract? If they're important, are they? Sometimes they're not under contract. Maybe they should be, right? What are those costs? Review the costs. And if they are working really well, fantastic. They'll put them under a long-term contract, right? Maybe get a better price. Get your outsourced vendors that are really performing well committed to you long-term. And then for each vendor, it's really good to have second sources for each. In case something happens, hey, with the tariff situations going on these days, it could make sense to have another vendor. And even with the vendors you're working with or looking to work with, go a layer deeper, 2 layer deep. Some people even go 3 layers, but have your vendors tell you what are your component suppliers, right? What is their tariff risk, right? So kind of see what might change your cost structure down the pike with this tariff world we're living in these days. And I like to put the top firms that you're going to be working with, put them on a 20-month budget forecast in terms of what you're going to spend along with the vendor and what you're going to be spending to buy from the vendor. Okay, box 3. Let's move on to box 4, banking. First of all, it's good to have 2 banks. That's a good thing. People have seen there are there were companies that go under, so it's always not a bad idea to have a second bank. And sometimes banks will realign and have and set up a new strategy. For example, HSBC, a bank right now, is firing 4,000 of their U.S. clients because they want to have a more international banking viewpoints in the world. So if you were at HSBC Bank, you're scrambling. So it's good to have a second bank, right? But visit your banks or bank, certainly your top bank, if you haven't, right? This is what our CFOs do. As I mentioned, they go right in and they'll meet with the tax people, the banking people. Set up signing level authorities. If it's just yourself, obviously, you're not going to set up a signing level authority for yourself. But if there's a few people that are writing checks or spending money, it's good to put in signing level authorities. Everything over $5,000 requires 2 signatures and approval from such and such, right? And if you have some money in the bank these days, look at Treasury. There's good yields, and we're in a relatively high, medium to high interest rate environment right now. Get 4 to 5% on your money that's just sitting there. If you just got a few 10,000s in the bank, well, okay, don't worry about it. But if you've got hundreds of thousands, you might as well make some money on that. A lot of people don't take advantage of that. They should. Best time to get a credit line is when times are good. So you may think you don't need a credit line, okay, but why not put it in place? Go in there. Often there's no carrying cost for that. Don't pay for your credit line, by the way. But as long as there's no cost for it, not a bad idea to have that in place. Yeah, there's a lot of fraud out there these days. The biggest fraud is checks. People whitewashing and using the checks, doing false withdrawals, and ACH is another one. So there's different tools that banks provide to reduce fraud, and I would recommend everyone take advantage of those. Almost every bank has something, some more than others. Okay, so we just finished our business support layer, the foundational layer of the CFO's mindset, we'll call it. So now we're going to go to the operational layer, right? We're building on the business support layer, right? We have our bank in place and that's going well, and tax and legal and all our compliance. We've gone through all the outsourced vendors. Now we're going to think operationally. And we'll start with the systems. what systems do you have in place? And a lot of people, and I myself, have started and run companies just on a spreadsheet, but eventually you want to get into systems, and it's become pretty affordable, and they're pretty powerful. And so, for example, if you're in a spreadsheet right now running your business, go ahead and put that in QuickBooks. And there's also very cheap people, cheap labor out there that can help you with the QuickBooks. You can spend $100 a month for a bookkeeper, or a few $100s a month if you're doing simple stuff. So we often get in there, and we first thing we'll do is review the accounting system, and we'll also look at the chart of accounts that's used within that accounting system, and make sure it's ready for prime time, it's ready to go, it's ready to help you scale. And then looking at the other systems, HR systems. Does the company use Slack? Okay, fine, let's embrace it. What are you using for your CRM, for your marketing and sales activities? And again, a lot of these can integrate. And when they're integrated, that just gives you, more leverage, more time back. To do the integration requires API setups. Now, you don't necessarily have to do it. You can play in the CFOs. Most CFOs aren't the ones actually setting up the APIs, but overseeing it, hiring someone to do it, and make sure the systems are integrated. And once you have systems in place, and you're feeling good about the reporting that they're providing you, or you as a controller, the controller you have is providing you accurate information from the past, then you can set up KPIs. And very common ones are you can do two on the growth side: revenue and new account generation, for example, and just track that. So a lot of people do KPIs for many different things. Not saying you can't do more than that, but just try it for revenue and account generation, or new leads, or however, you bring in your money, and just start there and build from there. And then on the expense side, do the same thing. Track how much, decide how much you want to spend and set a budget, and then track it, right? And see how you've done. And you can also track your cost savings, which would in essence be profit, or would add to the profit. A very important part of KPIs are the reporting. You can't really see how you're doing unless you're reporting. So you have to make sure you have the right lists of reports you want to get out. You want to set up a cadence of those reports. Monthly, quarterly, and annually are very common, but it could be quarterly. If monthly is too soon, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Whatever it is for your particular business, set it up and keep running consistently in that. Well, it'll really help you operationally to move forward. There's a lot of tools online that you can use for KPI management. Like there's KPI map template here you can see on the screen. So just look online. There's lots of tools you can use. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. You could just use bullet points in a Word document if you had to. Profit. Okay, all right. So of course, what we want to do is have profit. And so, CFOs will get in there and look. Sometimes it's the first thing they're looking at, right? Is what's the bottom line profit? What's out of whack? Why don't we have profit? Something we're doing with most of our companies, certainly if there's more than 10 employees, is certainly more than 20 employees, is we want to get that company on some kind of expense management platform. The three I've seen the most, there's many out there, and they're all very good, but the three I've seen the most are Expensify, Ramp, and Brex. Brex started actually as a credit card and then went into expense management. But regardless, it allows you don't have to do expense reports anymore. You don't have to wait for expense reports to come in to close your books at the end of the month or the end of the quarter. It all happens automatically. You can set up those spending authorities for various employees as well, all automatically. So it makes it very nice. And yes, it integrates into your accounting system. Another thing I like companies to do is look at your workflow. How is work getting done? How is this person handing something to that person? What data do you have to get to complete the order? Things like that, and map that out. And what you'll find is often people will find quite a few inefficiencies in what they're doing in their workflow. And by fixing that up, it means people can do other things. Maybe you don't have to hire someone that you thought you'd have to hire. It helps profit, right, at the end of the day. So think through an optimization workflow. It's not hard to do. You don't need some PhD person to come in and do it. Just what are they doing day to day? And how's an order getting through is another thing to look for. If you're not profitable, well, of course, if you're a startup company, early stage, you're not going to be, no problem, but have a break-even forecast. When are you going to break even, right? And that would be, there's different measures of break even, but you want to know how you're going to get there. And this is where setting up milestones and KPIs helps you get there. Now, cash flow. Um, for cash flow management, there's also tools. You can see some tools on the right-hand side of the screen that those are the three that I've seen the most. Again, there's many out there. There's many tools and systems that can help you do this well to do the management and control that's needed. Do you have payroll? A lot of people are doing payroll by hand. And yeah, you can save a little bit of money, but it's become so affordable now with payroll, with Gusto and Paychecks. There's so many out there that it almost doesn't make sense, right? Just the $100, $110 you may pay a month to run your payroll and have everything there for you. Gosh, when COVID hit, I felt so sorry for the people that didn't have a payroll service because they had to figure all this kind of stuff out on their own. But if you had a payroll service, they would just give you the forms it would use to apply for the various loans and money that was out there. Cash flow. Well, here's a very simple way to improve your cash flow, right? Think about improving the time it takes to collect from your clients, move it up 10 days, and then maybe extend your payments out to vendors. And by definition, you'll have more cash flow. And of course, if you're not profitable, it's really important to think about how to extend your cash runway, right, to get to that break-even point. And that's where these tools on the right-hand side of the screen can help you with. They'll all give you runway analysis and things like that. Okay, all right. Well, we're making our way through the 12 boxes here. We've just gone through the operational layer. So we have the business support. We built on top of that. Now we've got operations humming. And by the way, the business support layer, we often have our CFOs. We give them 90 days. Many do it in 60 days to get that snapping and working well. The operational layer can take a while, to get in there, to get CFO ready. We'll call it. It could take a year or more, right? But once that's running well, then, or maybe in parallel, but certainly then you're ready to look at the strategic layer. And now we're going to go through the 4 strategic boxes and what those entail. Exit planning, mergers and acquisitions. You may have a lifestyle business and your goal never is to sell the company in any way, or you don't want to grow by acquisition, and that's fine. So you just wouldn't do much in this particular box, right? This would not be a box that would pertain to you. Maybe focus on the other 11 boxes. And certainly lifestyle businesses often are in that mode where they're more likely not going to sell at the end of the day. But if you're building a business that you at least think could have an exit and could be a nice payday to you and the other owners of the company, then you should be doing some exit planning. You can see the middle exhibit here. This is from an actual client at the CFO Center. We had the CFO, took him about a month, but figured out the top 10 acquirers. You know what we did? We put business development plans in place to go talk to and engage and figure out ways we would get to know these folks so they could eventually acquire us. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a due diligence deal room there. It's a really good idea to get all your documents organized. You may have them here and there, but put them in a nice form here, a nice structured format here, because if you ever get an unsolicited offer, you need to be ready. I've seen too many deals die where people were just trying to get all their due diligence together and the people just got project fatigue and it faded. So if there's one thing you might want to do for exit planning is just organize all your documents so you're ready to go if someone comes knocking on the door. Good to know your exit options. What are your exit options? There's actually, the Exit Planning Institute will tell you there's 8 major types of ways to exit. Not all would be appropriate to you. So get to know your exit options and then put an exit plan together. I talked about, potentially putting your top 10 exit potentials together, deal room. Okay. I'm going to now, we're still with box 9 now. I'm going to stay in box 9, but have one offshoot slide here about the Exit Planning Institute. I guess I'm a little biased because I went through their program. I'm a certified exit planning advisor, but it's a pretty good framework they have. It's a little bit complicated visually, but it's pretty simple to understand. The first phase is putting a plan together, a prioritized action plan. And this would include not just the business and getting a feel for what the business is worth today, but how does your personal finances come into play? What do you want from the business? Do you want to retire from an exit of the business? Okay, well, what's your wealth goal? Therefore, we know what your business needs to grow to in value to be able to exit so you can get that money. Phase two is what they call the prepare phase, prepare for exit. And really that should be renamed, in my opinion, the growth phase. Now, here's where you're growing the business. You may have decided in phase one that you really want to sell your company for $10 million and you want to do that in 4 years. Awesome. So now you've got 4 years. So now you go through a series of activities. The Exit Planning Institute has a whole system called the Value Acceleration Model. It's very similar to EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System. But basically, they're both a way to do 90 days for set up your KPIs and targets and goals on a quarterly basis and try to achieve them and then reset them. And what you're doing, of course, is over time, you're trying to build the value of your company. And then phase three, every 90 days, the Exit Planning Institute will say, do you want to exit now or keep growing? Usually keep growing, but at some point you may say, I want to exit, and then you fall out the chute and you're ready to sell the company. Okay, that's a quick overview on exit planning from the Exit Planning Institute. Oh, they also have this concept of the 3 legs of the stool where you want to not just exit your business, but you want to know what you're going to do after you exit your business, and you're going to want to know that your personal finances are being met. Quick, interesting stat: 75% of business owners have strong or moderate dissatisfaction with their exit 1 year after they've sold the company. 75%. So that's why the Exit Planning Institute wants to know, what you're doing after your exit. Okay, back to the 12 boxes. We're almost done here in our flyby. So now we're on number 10 of 12. Risk analysis and mitigation. I mentioned earlier when I was an entrepreneur, I didn't do a good job in this. Who likes to talk about the problems, right? You want to see where you're going to go. But I've really done a 180 on that. And I realized that doing a really good job of analyzing your risk and then putting these mitigation plans in place, like what would you do if that happened? Many of these should be rolled into your overall strategy for your business. And of course, when disaster does happen, you're ready for it. So I like to, when we get in there working as a CFO for a company, identify the top financial risks of the company. A big risk that people discovered this year is their reliance on vendors that for their products that are shipping from China, right, based on the tariffs, right? So you need to. That's just one of a few financial risks you may have. So it's good to track that, to write that out, and then create a plan for each one of these, and mitigation plans. And these are just things that can be sitting on the shelf metaphorically, but you pull them off when something happens and you're ready to go, right? And you're rather than spend a week or two pulling your hair out, not knowing what to do, you've already thought through it and you've got a plan and you can react and maybe react faster than your competition. And then IT, right? So there's so many IT hacks going on right now. And I know of one business that had horrible IT. They never fully recovered, honestly. The revenue went down. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, right? You're going to have an IT hack. And so have a disaster recovery plan for that. Know what to do. Have backups of hopefully everything and have a plan in place you can pull off the shelf. And then are there any legal risks from the operations? And then also making sure, you know your insurance, that you're going to, use the right insurances. That will help your business based on the stage you're at. All right, box 11, business plan, business planning. This is an important area, and this shouldn't just be the role of the CFO either. The CEO should be doing this, who's ever involved in business development, business strategy committee. And if you're just a lone operator, then it's all you, right? You're playing all these roles, and now you're doing the business planning. So do you have a business plan, first of all? And is it up to date? And is it documented? A lot of people say, yeah, I have a business plan, but it's in their head. But man, when you put things down on paper, you're like, oh, well, actually, that doesn't quite make sense. And then you can get feedback from it and change it, right? So have a business plan and document it and make sure it's up to date. SWOT analysis, pretty basic concept. My guess is most people on the call here on the webinar have seen these before, but it's good to do for your business. You may have heard of it, know of it, but just never done it for your business. You're like, I know it, but spend the time. Figure out what are the strengths of your business? What are the weaknesses of your business? Right? And what are the opportunities? Where can you take it? And what are the threats to the business, whether it's competition or tariffs or whatever they may be? I always think pricing strategy and geographic expansion, it's 2 ways to grow revenue. And then also your hiring plan. So you're going to put a strategy in place, but now you have to have people to help you get there. So you need a staffing plan and you need to start recruiting and you make sure you have the right benefits. And if you're going to have some more people in the company, you may need an office, Sure, a lot of people are working all from home these days, but a lot of companies, almost needed to have people in an office. And so these are all things to consider with a business plan. And if you do have a board of directors, set up committees within the board, right? Set up board governance so that it's not just you as the CEO telling your employees what to do. You can say, hey, I'm getting beat up from my board of directors. What's the latest revenue plan or whatever it is, right? So it's good to have board committees if you're at that stage in your life of your company where you do have a board of directors. All right, we're at the last box number 12, funding financing the company. So we talked about knowing your banker. I think you should try to get a credit line if times are good right now. It's good to know who your top 20 investors will be if you're going to raise capital for your company. Spend the time to know who they are. If you're going to raise capital, equity capital, you don't just walk in and go, "Hi, I'm here. Please give me money." They want to get to know you. I remember it was my very first startup company I ever did. We had a guy named Jim Schwartz from Excel Ventures, very famous VC. And he gave me some advice after I was so happy after I gave my presentation. They just financed the company, so I wasn't trying to raise capital. But what I was telling him is, what do you think? He's like, well, Brad, that's good. Let me tell you a story. And what he basically said is, entrepreneurs always think you want to show a pretty picture of your company. Look, these equity investors, at least sophisticated ones, don't want to see a picture. They want to see a small movie, a short movie. They want to come in, meet you, hear what you had to say, listen for what your next month or 2 months from now milestone is, see if you hit it. They tend not to move as fast as we want to with entrepreneurs. So it's good to know who those investors will be and get to know them. And the best time to have a conversation with an investor is before you're raising capital, not while you're raising capital. And then if you do have stakeholders, equity investors, good to set up an investor relations program. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen here, what that could consist of. Okay, well, thank you for traveling with me through those 12 boxes. You might be thinking to yourself, well, gosh, now how do I use this in my company? And I do. I'd like you to go home today and think about your business in the 12-box methodology and think of it as your dashboard, your financial dashboard or your CFO dashboard, where these are the things that you're going to set plans for on a quarterly basis. Figure out which one's the weakest of these 12 and maybe focus on that over the next quarter. And overall prioritize across the 12 boxes what you're going to do, right? So it's planning. It's planning using this as a framework. And I'll leave us today with this last slide I have, which is talking about the type of CFO roles. I have a feeling many people on the call today, on the webinar, don't have a CFO, probably can't afford a CFO, and they're acting as the CFO, and that's fine, right? Again, this 12-box methodology could be a very good way for you to do that. If you want to step up and actually have a CFO helping you run this, maybe you don't have the experience, don't have the time, don't want to do it, consider a fractional CFO, a part-time ongoing CFO. A full-time CFO, I think we all know what that is. Those tend to be expensive. The average price is somewhere between $350,000 and $1,000 and $450,000 a year for CFOs, so they're pricey. You'll also hear the term interim CFO, and that just means a full-time CFO before they hire a full-time CFO. So anyway, I wanted to finish up with just a flyby of the types of CFOs. So overall, that's it. So that's the 12 boxes. I hope you find that useful to run your business. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Yeah, that was really great. It seems like the CFO mindset is just being curious about everything. And a lot of our small businesses are really heavily product or service focused. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on like where they can get started with being, implementing more of that CFO mindset versus just being super product or service focused.
Sure. Well, probably the first thing to do is think about shoring up the risk areas, de-risk the business. That's probably the very first thing I think anyone can do for your business. You want to do exciting things like go international or bring out the new product line. But sometimes the simplest things and maybe the most effective things and things that increase the value of the company are shoring up the risks, right? Do you have your major customers under contract? You don't. Oh my gosh, go do that. Do you have the right insurances in place? So often the easiest and most effective and fastest thing to do is de-risk the enterprise. Any other questions out there?
That's really great. Jenna has a question. Do you have any recommendations on pricing or strategy resources that you could share?
Pricing or strategy resources. Okay. Well, I'll start with pricing. I guess that's a two-part question. I'll tell you what the cost of a fractional CFO of the CFO Center is. The usually at the CFO Center, what we're able to do is we put a work plan together of what we're going to go do. And by the way, it follows those 12 boxes. And we can set kind of a month fixedly price of what that would be over time because it tends to be pretty. And the average price for that for last year for 2024 was $6,700 a month. That was actually technically the median price. So half were below that and half were above that to give a feel for pricing. And in terms of strategy, I would suggest attending my webinar tomorrow. That's going to be on exit planning and strategy, where I'm actually going to go through a number of strategy tools that companies can use. But I think some good ones to use is a SWOT analysis, Porter 5 Forces, and the business planning canvas. Those are three tools that I think are really good tools for any company.
And your SPDC advisor can help you with many of those, like the business model canvas, the planning piece of it.
Good point.
Business planning
Exactly.
piece of it, yeah. Does anyone else have a question? Brad, this is sort of oh, let's ask this one first. Jen is asking that as an entrepreneur and therefore a CFO, do you have a recommendation for a book to read?
Yes, I do. It's an older one. It's called Good to Great. Good to Great. And it's what ended up being the entrepreneur operating system. I think that would be a good book to read.
Great. Well, we have a couple more questions getting typed in. Mike, did you?
Yeah, at what size or scale of an organization would you start to consider bringing in a CFO or outside, eyes and ears to start looking at things differently?
Great
I mean,
question.
is there a certain number or scale or amount of product that you're moving or headcount where you
Yeah,
start
there
to think
is.
that that's a good idea?
There is. Yeah. If you're not making any revenue, it's probably too early for a CFO. Get a controller in there or a bookkeeper, right, to make sure the costs are going well. And usually ends up being somewhere between the $1 to $2 million mark is where maybe getting, fractional CFO involved. And certainly when you get above 2 million, it starts to make sense. And some companies don't have CFOs for a long time, but certainly once you get above 5 million, having someone in there that has that CFO mindset is highly recommended.
That's really great. And then you had made recommendations throughout the course of your presentation about other options that are out there that are fairly low cost, such as getting a bookkeeper, outsourcing payroll services, which kind of does give you a little bit of insight and helps you out. And then we talked
That's right.
about, Heidi brought up, make sure that you're checking in with your SBDC advisor. They can, provide a lot of insight, ask the right questions, direct you to resources, et cetera. Any other things you'd like to mention for those to kind of implement this mindset at below that threshold where they're at the point of like actually hiring somebody or bringing in somebody in a fractional capacity?
Well, if you're not at that point yet, right, you haven't grown there, then that's your goal, right? Assuming you want to grow your company, that some people just are fine to make 250 a year or whatever, right? 250,000 a year. But if your goal is to start growing the company, yeah, I think it starts to make sense to have someone who's doing that as a company hits certain milestones.
Let's re-ask the question about pricing. And then Maggie, we'll get back to yours. She meant more in terms of what the company should consider when setting up their pricing strategy and any
Oh,
resources besides the
oh,
SBDC.
oh, I see. Okay, how to do pricing strategy. Well, so when I was an entrepreneur, I always looked at pricing strategy as you had to triangulate between three things. One was your overall cost structure. You don't want to price your costs below, what they cost to make, for example. The second is competition in terms of what they're offering. And the third and the most important is the value from the client, the customer that you're selling to, and what they see as the value of what you're providing. And if you can think about those three things and kind of triangulate like that, um, that's a really good way to think about how to set your right pricing. If you look online and do pricing tools, there's a lot of online tools that will help you think through your pricing. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but if you just type like online pricing tools, you'll see some things out there. They'll eventually try to sell you more services, but they'll give kind of free tools to figure it out. But I had pretty good success as an entrepreneur, just trying to triangulate, as I talked about, with the pricing. Start with that.
It's a very good process. And Karen has suggested that there are some great resources out there on value-based pricing, looking online. So Maggie's question is kind of particular. She's opening a new retail food location, and she's currently using all spreadsheets. So she's trying to figure out the best way to be able to see everything all in one place, repayment schedule, different bills and financing. So
Yeah.
what's your first suggestion for her?
QuickBooks. I got to say QuickBooks, right? It's just you can get all these views. It's so simple to use. It's affordable, and there's so many third-party vendors that don't charge much to help you with it. That'd be my recommendation.
And if you're an SBDC client, you could get 5 hours of QuickBooks help getting your QuickBooks up and running through the LEAF program. So that might be a good way to start, and then be able to have a bookkeeper or someone else help you manage it going forwards. All right. Anyone else? Mike, did you have any other questions? You have great questions.
I don't. This was such a great
All good.
webinar
All
with
good.
so much great information. Brad, I'm going to be going back to this. I'll probably have more questions after we finish up and I get to watch it again, but I thought this was awesome. Thank you so much.
You bet. I enjoyed it. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Brad. And as a reminder, yes, there will be a recording provided. We are putting together all of our LEAF webinars on YouTube, and we'll send that information out once they're all done after tomorrow. Thank you all for joining us. Brad, thank you for sharing this really great information. And a reminder of Brad's exit planning strategy webinar tomorrow at noontime. You can, if you're interested and haven't signed up, you can do that on our website as well. Okay, thank you very much.